Hello and welcome. My name is Kathleen, and tonight we're going to talk about how surveys can help your small business marketing. I apologize for being a couple minutes late. Facebook just won't cooperate, so I'm going to have to upload it for them later, but that's the way it goes. You know, some days it's just not going to work. Some days some fight back, some days others do. It's just all part of the fun, right? But that's okay. So how's everybody doing? Are you ready to learn about how this can work? This is the kind of thing that can be done on the fly or prepared in advance, can be something that you hire out to a third-party company, or you can do for yourself for free. The whole point is most people aren't doing it, and they really could benefit from doing it. So whether you're, a gamer that's looking to monetize the gaming that you're doing, whether you're on Etsy and you're trying to sell your stuff and you're just not getting the traction you want, or you're a more traditional, small or medium business, wherever you fall on the spectrum, this is the kind of thing that can really help your customers find you and help you serve your customers and your clients better. So I'm going to start the show and we will dive right in. Hello and welcome. So let's dive right into this. We're going to talk about surveys and how they can help your small business marketing, which means helping you and helping your customers and your clients. The ultimate win-win. Let us dive in, shall we? Okay, so when we're talking about surveys, it's always good to kind of level the playing field here and explain what we're talking about, right? The main focus of these are anything that you do where you're asking your customers and your clients for their opinions, their general information, their expectations. Whether you're doing it online or on paper, doesn't really matter. The whole point is just getting it out there so that they can tell you what they're thinking, because you can guess, you can talk to the people that you're dealing with on a regular basis, but that's only a small subset of your audience, and so you want to try to cast a wider net, and that's what really you're going to use surveys for. One of the other nice things about it is you can collect lots of information from lots of people in a very short amount of time, which is always a good thing because time is the one thing we don't get back, right? Okay, let's keep going here. So let's get down to it. How can a survey help your business? They're extensive, okay? That is hands down the number one benefit for all of us who are going to do a survey, okay? No other method that you're going to use is going to give you such deep data from such a wide population. And it is something that you don't have to do. Sorry, what are you doing? Sorry, Murphy was acting weird. You don't have to do it, daily, weekly, monthly. If you do it once, twice a year, you can get the information that you need for the next 6 months or a year easily. And it gives you information that you can not only verify your expectations off of, but also plan out where you want to go. And make sure you're on the right track before you spend a lot of time, money, and effort going down that track, only to find out then that maybe that wasn't what everybody was looking for. They're very flexible, okay? You can use them to reach your local audiences, your remote audiences, your customers who you've never met online, and you can target them, if you want to. You can be very specific, you can be very broad. The whole thing is to just be aware of that goal when you're building it, right? You don't want to build something that you think is going to be broad and find out that it was too specific, and vice versa. But as long as you go about it, knowing what your end goal is, knowing what type of survey you want to build, and we're going to talk about that, then you're going to be fine. And everything is going to fall into place for you, and you're going to get all that nice, juicy information that you can work with later. The other good thing about them, particularly when you're dealing with when you're dealing with any kind of a survey that is anonymous, right? So basically, if you're not asking them for their name, their email address, that kind of stuff. Now, yes, you might end up doing that because you maybe you're going to offer, some sort of free gift or something. You do want to be careful about that, because sometimes people will fill out the survey just to get the free gift or the discount or whatever it is you're offering. Also, you lose this anonymous feature, and it can feel sometimes like a cheat to people if they go through a survey thinking it's anonymous, and then at the end you ask for their email address, because now They're afraid that you're going to know that you said these things about them. So as much as you can, keep it anonymous. Give them that gift of being able to say anything they want, and not have to worry about the fact that, they are the ones saying it. Murphy agrees. He's very talkative tonight. So by staying anonymous, you're letting people be open and honest and candid with you. And that's what you want, right? If you're going to spend the time to do the survey, whether you're going to do a free one or a paid one, and you're expecting your customers and clients, or potential or active, to spend time on it, you want everybody's time to be well used. And the best way to do that is to leave it anonymous. Cost. So seriously, this can cost you nothing more than a little time. Or you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on it, like most things in the world, right? I always recommend you start off free. Get used to doing the surveys, thinking it through, coming up with your questions, reviewing your data. That said, there's nothing wrong with outsourcing it as long as you can be very clear about what you want from the survey and how you want it to function. The other way that is sometimes worth it to spend a little money. If you're going to be sending a survey out to people who you already know, like you already have their email addresses, you already have their mailing addresses if you're going to send out a paper one, you don't necessarily need to spend any more money, right? Well, if you're going to send out paper, obviously there's postage, but you don't need a third party for that kind of a thing. Where you might want to branch into spending a little bit of money is if you are trying to survey people that are not active customers. So your potential customers, your fringe customers, the people who don't know that you exist, maybe. That's where you're going to have to pay a little bit. And then again, there are sliding scales for that. But just as an example, you can go to something like SurveyMonkey. You can build out your survey and you can say that you want it to be public. Okay, now that they're not just going to spew it to everybody, because just like with any kind of, Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever, you can target it to geographic, income, age ranges, education levels. There's all kinds of factors, and you can, dial it in a little bit. And most of the good tools will tell you, an estimate of, okay, with these settings, you can expect to get about this many results. Any service like that is going to cost you a little bit of money because they're actively having to go out and put those surveys in front of people and basically advertise to try to get respondents for you. But you do get the benefit of getting all that information from people that may not know you exist or may not reach out willingly, or that you don't have any other way to contact. So again, depending on your situation, it might be worth looking at, as always, start off just like you do with ads, like start off with a small one, test the waters, see if you get a good enough result, and then maybe go and spend a little bit more money on it to go a little bit more in depth. But other than that, you can absolutely do this for free. SurveyMonkey is a great example. You can go and you can do a free, simple survey. I think they're allowing, I can't remember if it's 10 or 15 questions. Now, you're not going to be able to do a lot of branching or a lot of fancy stuff in that, but it doesn't matter, because if you are very careful about the way you're wording your questions, the answers and the opportunities that you're giving your audience to respond to, you can get very good, usable information from that. If you can afford to spend even just a little bit more, you can get into more complex ones, not complex from your end, but complex from the logic in them, where you can say, you can have like 3 or 4 generic questions, and then you could have a branching question, and then based on their answer, you can have them go down one path, another path, or another path, and then collect more targeted information. So you can start off generic and then get more targeted depending on how they answer some previous question. Those usually cost you a little bit of money, but again, it's not really cost prohibitive. It's just, if you want that little bit of extra functionality, of course it's going to cost you a little bit more. But at the end of it, whether you're spending nothing or you're spending, a little bit on it, you're going to get the kind of information that you can't get any other way. And as long as you have planned it out and then you review it and you take action on it, it's all going to benefit you down the road, because it is going to give you that information you can't get any other way. So, how are surveys helpful? Where are you going to want to use them? They are awesome for identifying and understanding your customer perceptions and expectations. Now, I know you think you understand that, and that may absolutely be the case, but there is always the chance that you might be a little off on it, and it might be a little off in a way that does not work out so well for you. So you do want to tap into that kind of thing, right? So if you're very sure that you understand your customer perceptions and expectations, great, then this will verify. Maybe you're not so sure about it, right? Maybe you're getting some sort of feedback that's leading you to believe that their perception of something does not match yours, okay, and so their expectations are not being met, and we all know that that's never good for an audience of any type. So this is a great way to dial in and see. Maybe ask the question a couple of different ways to see, if you ask a question a couple of different ways and you get the same answer back, you know that answer is solid. If you ask it a couple of different ways and you're not getting answers that overlap, then you have a problem with your questions, and you can go back and redo it. And that, frankly, is one of the nice things about surveys, because you can monitor them while they run. And if you're seeing something that's not quite right, you can either stop the survey and do a new one, or you can adjust maybe the wording of one of the questions if you can identify which one is the problem. But that's another piece of the flexibility puzzle there, is the fact that you can hone it in. So like, let's say you're going to set up a survey to run for 2 or 3 weeks. If you see after a couple of days that, people are giving kind of strange answers to a question, you might want to go back and revisit that one and change it, for the rest of that time, to see if maybe you can dial that in a little bit better for people. While we're talking about these kinds of things, let me point out to you that I have put together a free survey ebook. So if you go to yourtechcoach.net/free survey guide, do it all lowercase. I really need to fix that. I'm going to fix that on the fly here. Evidently doing it camel case caused problems. But if you go there, all you have to do is put in your email address, and then you will be able to get the free book. Basically, you can look at it as everything I couldn't fit in to a standard half-hour type show here, but also sort of like a checklist that you can use when you're planning out and building your own surveys. So you go to yourtechcoach.net, free survey guide, and you will be good to go. It's totally free. Like I said, just email address, and you can have that for your very own. Okay? All right, let's go back. So, oops, that would be the wrong one. Hello. That other one was my desktop. What's wrong, Murph? The other way that these surveys are helpful is that they will help you gauge the satisfaction of your customers with a product, process, service, whatever it is that you're providing. Now, that may sound a lot like the first one, but it's actually not, because your customer perceptions and expectations can be off of what you expect, and yet they can still be satisfied, or vice versa. Their perceptions and expectations can be rock solid, but their satisfaction could be terrible. So that's why these are really different things. One is how they're thinking about it, and one is how they're feeling about it, right? The next thing is pain points, right? You, again, may think but you're not your audience. See, that's the trick with all this stuff. And especially like the more you know your business and your product, your topics, the more you know about it, the less you're like your customers. So you want to identify the pain points that they're having that you have no clue about, or maybe you're only suspicious about, right? So, if they're having a product with a process or a product or a service, whether it's understanding it or making it work for them, or it's missing something that they expected to have or they need to have, surveys are a great way to find all of that out. And also, as a side product, to be able to maybe look to see if it's certain parts of your target market that are having those problems where others maybe aren't, because maybe you need to adjust your message for that segment. Maybe it's fine for everybody else, but that one segment is having a problem with, they're struggling with something. And by doing this kind of a survey, you can find out what that is and help them get to the point where they're getting the value that you want them to have, right? I mean, that's why we're doing this. We're doing this to provide value to people, so that they'll keep coming back to us, right? I mean, that's sort of the whole cycle of this thing. And if you are not aware of pain points that they're experiencing and you're not addressing them, they're going to feel ignored, right? Or they're going to feel cheated, and we do not want that. So this is the type of thing that you can get from a survey that you won't get any other way, because a lot of people will not take the time to reach out and tell you. I know that sounds weird, and I'm certainly not one of those people. I'm one of those people, I will most of the time reach out and tell somebody if I'm not happy, but most of the public is not that way. And to be honest, I mean, even though I do it a lot, there are times when I'm just like, the hell with it, I don't have time for this, and I just move on and I find something else. So you want to be proactive about that. You want to reach out on a regular basis. No, not every day, but once or twice a year does not hurt to reach out to your audience to say, hey, is this working for you? Is that working for you? Are you having any problems with this? You can kind of target those questions a little bit by looking at your, support logs, your email, complaints, that kind of thing. But don't limit yourself to that, because again, those are the people who took the time to reach out. There is a whole nother group of people that have never whispered a word to you about it. Problem is, they're probably whispering it to their friends and coworkers and that kind of thing. So again, that's why you want to be as proactive about it as possible, and leave it as wide open as you can, which we'll cover in a minute, because this is the kind of information that frankly is gold and can be make or break for any of our businesses. Off of that same line, once you've got that information, you can help to identify potential improvements, enhancements, requirements, new features or services or products, whatever it is that somebody might need. And then you can do once you've identified that in a survey, you could do a smaller sub-survey, maybe just to the people that reported those problems, or maybe a 50-50. People who reported the problems and 50% who didn't, saying, hey, we're thinking about making this change or adding this product or this service. What do you think about it? And ask a few questions and see, does that sound like something that they're going to want? Because again, you don't want to invest a lot of time and money into something only to find out later you're wrong. You want to catch that as early as possible. So this one works on two sides, right? One is this is the kind of information you're going to get from a survey, but the other side of it is you can test to see if the ideas that you've got for addressing any of the problems is hitting close enough to the mark. And once you've got it narrowed down, and usually as a part of the previous one, you can kind of prioritize, right? Because you can't do everything all at once, right? So maybe you've come up with a new product, a new process, and maybe a change to an existing one. But you need priorities, right? You can't do everything all at once. So you can kind of work into this. Okay, well, if we're going to offer this new product, this enhancement, or, fix this bug, what's your priorities, right? And see, because a lot of times you'll see a very clear pattern. Now, there's always going to be outliers, right? There's always going to be people on any part of the scale there. But if you can, survey 50, 100, 500 people, and out of that find out that, 40% really want the bug fixed, okay? And then the rest of it is broken across the other two, then you know where you need to start, right? And then you can go and move on to the others. But again, you're not going to spend a lot of time on something, put something out there, only to have them go, well, that's nice, but I really wanted the bug fixed, right? So it's super handy. I am just going to check here to see if we have any questions so far, because now that Facebook isn't working for me tonight, I can't be sure that any of my other tools are behaving. So I'm just going to be a little paranoid because it pays off. Okay, we're good. Thank you. I'm glad. Thank you for letting me know that. That also helps. It helps to hear from you. And as always, if you folks have any questions, if you have any suggestions as we're going through this, or if you have a topic, you have a question completely off the topic, that's fine too. As I said earlier, I only bring a topic so we have some place to start talking, but you can always ask me other questions. It's totally fine. You can also, if you want to join the mailing list to stay on top of things, I always let the mailing list folks know first what the next topic's going to be. So you can feel free to go ahead and join me there. It's free. Can't lose with free, right? And you don't have to worry. I get you. I'm not interested in selling my list to anybody. Nobody gets access to my list. This is solely so I can reach out to you and you can stay informed. All right, let's go back. Hey, I got it right that time. All right, so let's talk about the different types of surveys that you can do. There's a bunch. Obviously, we're all walking around with these. So online and mobile surveys are a great way to go. Like I said, you can do them for free in many cases. And they kind of work extra well for your audiences because they've always got the device in their hands. And your survey is not something, ideally, that should take hours. So it could be something that they could do when they've got a couple of free minutes between meetings or on the bus or train ride home or whatever. They can just grab the phone and do it wherever it's convenient for them. So that's kind of a good way to go. Obviously, also that means it'll work on laptops and Chromebooks and desktops and laptops, where, let's face it, we're spending most of our time, whether we want to face that reality or not. So that's always a good way to go. Also, those tend to be the cheapest option financially. Like, it doesn't cost you a lot to do them. And you can monitor the results as they're coming in. There's a lot of benefits to those. You can, however, do face-to-face interviews. Now, the thing with this is you don't want to be the one doing the face-to-face interview. You really don't want your staff, your sales team doing it. This is where you're going to want to hire either a company that does this or hire a couple of people, that would be willing to go out and do this for you. This is the kind of thing, where, people are standing in the mall with a clipboard and they ask questions, or outside the coffee shop. But if you want to encourage responses, if you want to encourage those responses to be honest and open, you don't want it to be anybody in your company. The people who are answering the questions, the respondents, need to be talking to a disinterested third party so that they don't feel like they have to give the answers that they think you want to hear. You want those real answers. And that it's really important that whoever it is that's doing the interview is very clear about the fact that, look, I was just hired to do this. I have got nothing to do with this company. They've hired me to come out and ask these questions because that will open the floodgates much more than they will if they have any inclination that it's somebody from your business. Because generally people, unless they're really unhappy, generally people are not going to want to say anything even slightly negative to you about your business to your face. No matter how much you tell them it's okay, or that you want them to, or that it would be helpful, they'll smile, they'll nod, but some part of them is going to be, well, I have to put this in the gentlest way possible. And that's not really what you're looking for here. If you're going to do this, you have to be willing to take the negative, right? And then evaluate to see whether or not it is, fair and accurate. There's always people who are just unhappy or having a bad day. It happens to all of us. Be glad you weren't here an hour ago. It was a little testy around here. So, you just want to keep in mind that if you're going to do the face-to-face thing, make sure it's not somebody from your company, and that the person who is doing it as part of the script lets people know that you're not going to hurt my feelings because I've got nothing to do with this. I'm just asking you questions and getting paid to do so. Same thing goes for telephone surveys. There's two ways to do telephone surveys. One is to have somebody, doing the calls and then asking the questions, having a person doing it. Another is to send out either email or postal mail, a letter saying, hey, we're doing the survey. Would you be willing to participate? If so, if you dial this number, just answer yes, no to the questions. Press number 1, press number 2. And then you can also then leave additional information if you choose. So whichever way you want to do it. But again, this is going to cost you a little bit. And, the results for this type of thing once upon a time were not so bad. To be perfectly honest, these days, people don't want to pick up their phone, so the calling people directly thing is probably not as useful as it might have been once upon a time. Murphy agrees. Sending out an email or postal mail, like a letter, saying, hey, we're doing the survey, give them some information about it, reassure them about their privacy. If you're interested, would you call this number, and, giving them the instructions so they have to feel very confident about what they're going to do. Otherwise they're not going to do it. Nobody likes to feel stupid. Nobody wants to feel like they've got to fumble around. So as long as you're clear about it and you keep it simple, you might do better sending out the email or the letter saying, hey, call this and answer the surveys with, 1 for yes and 2 for no. That might actually do better because some people are so rightfully concerned about clicking on links and emails. We may start to see in the next 6 months or so a decline in the number of people who are willing to just click on a link. So the same thing, if you're going to do an online survey, in addition to having the link in your email, you're probably going to want to be able to say, type this site and put this code in at a site. To kind of lessen it, because let's face it, we had the conversation last week. If you missed it, you can go back and watch it. But the ransomware thing is real and growing, so you need to keep that in mind. That's why I think personally, telephone surveys where you give them a number to call and then they go through it is a much safer option than having somebody call them. And then, of course, there's always mail surveys. At this point, it's so retro, it might be cool. Once upon a time, that was the only way to do it. You would send things out. You go to a clearinghouse that would print them and put them in envelopes and send them to your mailing list, and they would show up on everybody's doorstep or mailbox. Of course, there is a cost involved in this because you've got to do the printing, you've got to pay for the postage, you've got to pay for the envelopes to be stuffed, you've got to then have somebody manually input all the responses that come back. So this is a much more manual intensive process. But again, like I said, it's so retro, it might be cool. So it might be worth looking at. If you reach out to some local vendors, you might be able to get a good deal on it. But it's something to think about. You can do any one of these. You can do all of these when you do a survey. So again, you don't have to feel like you have to limit yourself if you don't want to. If you want to try a combination, that'll also work too. It's all about whatever works for you. And again, I would start small if you've never done it before, and then maybe expand a little bit as you go. The important thing is just to do it, right? The important thing is just to make sure that you are getting this information that is unbelievably valuable to you. and not always as available as you think it is. By doing this, you're going to have the information that you need, and you can refer to it, back again throughout the next 6 months or year, or, it depends on your business and how much it changes. But you should be able to get at least a year of information out of this type of thing. Okay? All right. Oh, let's take that down. So let's talk about the types of questions that you're going to possibly want to use. And again, it's not that you have to use all of these. You pick one, pick a couple, whatever it is that's going to work for you, whatever works best for your audience and for your way of communicating. The first type that you've seen is open-ended questions. So basically that's just a question and it's got a text box underneath it and people type in their answers. You don't want to use too many of these. People don't want it to feel like they're doing an essay for school, right? So use these sparingly, but do use them because people are not always satisfied with just the pick and answer kind of a question, which we'll get to. So it's good to include at least one of these to give them the opportunity to tell you more if they want to. But I wouldn't never recommend doing an entire survey like this because a lot of people are like, yeah, this feels like homework. I don't have time. Closed-ended questions are the thing we were just talking about. So you have a question and you offer them a couple of answers and they get to pick one. You don't want to have just 2 answers maybe, but you don't want to have 50 answers. 8 to 10 is probably a good window, maybe 5 to 8 depending on your market and just the reasonable options for the question. But not the typical closed-ended question only has one response allowed. So you want to make sure that there's not a lot of overlap between the answers that you're providing them. You want them to be very clear-cut, with differences between them. If you can't get there, then you go with the multiple choice question, right? So again, that's a single question, and you can have, again, the 5 to 8, 8 to 10 answers, but you give them the option of selecting them. So the difference here, if you want to get slightly technical about it, is a closed-ended question is radio buttons. Okay, so that's the little circles that you click and they fill in, or if it's on paper, they're going to fill it in. Multiple choice are the boxes, the check boxes. So online, they click on it to select it, and they click on it again to deselect it, and they can do multiples of those. On a piece of paper, again, it's just going to be little boxes, and then they can put little checks or X's in them, depending on your preference or their preference, because they're going to do what they want to do when they've got a piece of paper in front of them. But that's the basic difference. And these are the 3 that you most often see on the surveys. Semi-closed-ended questions are basically the ones where you see other or additional information. So maybe you give them, a multiple choice, where they can pick a couple of different ones, and then you give them the other option or additional option, or however you want to phrase that. And when they select that, then the survey online is going to give them a 1 or 2 line text box to put in a short answer. It's not as long as the bigger ones that we were talking about in the first option. This is just a couple of words, maybe a sentence, very, very short and to the point. But again, it gives them that chance to give you an answer that you didn't think to offer them. Okay? On the single choice questions, what you can do with the radio button, you can have the 5 or 8, for them to select, and then you can say other. And then if they select that radio button, then they get a box where they can put in that text. On paper, obviously, the box will already be printed there, so it won't, they can just go ahead and fill it out. But is it really helpful for those situations where maybe there's an option that you didn't think of? So it's really a good idea to add these in, particularly on the multiple choice ones. When it comes to the single choice questions, you can do it. It's just you may end up with combination answers on your single choice question ones. Sorry, I'm getting people who are concerned about the Facebook fail. Facebook fails sometimes. Well, everything fails sometimes. We'll explain it to them in a minute. So that is the combination there. These can be very helpful, and these can give you ideas that you didn't come up with on your own, which frankly is gold. And then, of course, you're going to probably want to include some demographic questions. Now, the thing here is you need to be careful, right? You need to make sure your demographic questions do not over-identify the person, right? And you need to have text around this to make sure that they understand that this is just general. Okay, we're not using it to identify you. And there's most of the survey forms have prefab text that you can select for this question because it's very helpful for us to get, but people are kind of skittish about filling out. So just some general things, right? So, maybe you're going to ask about age, but if you do, don't be over specific, right? Ask for big, ranges. Don't ask for, you want the range to be at least 10 years or more. You don't want it to be like 2 or 3 year differences. So, if you're going to say, 40 to 50, or, you're going to do 40 to 50 instead of, or 40 to 49. If you want people in their 40s, you're not going to say, 41, 42, 43. Don't get that specific. Give them a big range. But be careful about not lumping people too much, because that can be kind of a trigger for people, and that can make them not fill in or not submit the survey. So yes, generally try to get whatever you can. Same thing with income. People are not super happy about revealing their income, but they might be okay with revealing what range it's in, so that's fine. Same thing, like, if they're performing a certain role, for, if you're like a business-to-business situation, maybe you want to know if they're a salesperson, or if they're in the manufacturing, or they're in the warehouse. That kind of stuff is okay. You don't want to get down to specific job titles. It's a little too much. But this is the useful kind of information. If you're going to ask about, sex, make sure you're not binary about it. Say, male, female, other. You can be specific with other, or not, depending on your preferences. But if you're going to be specific, make sure you cover all the combinations, and you can go online and find good examples of that. But also make sure that for all of these, you offer a "I prefer not to disclose" option, and let them know they're not penalized for that. That's their right to say, "I'm willing to answer your questions, but you can't know this." That's got to be okay. So if, as long as you got all that covered and you give them those options, you're more likely to get answers. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's the way people work. What can I tell you, right? Okay, let me go back to this. So finally, we're going to talk about the all-important crafting your questions. But before we go there, let's just remind you that I do have a free ebook for you. It is free. All you have to do is give me your email address, which is going to sign you up for the mailing list. And then you can get this. And this is it's a couple of pages, and it breaks this down also, but it also gives you a little bit more detail about the hows and the whys, and when to do things. And it's just really good as a checklist to have handy when you're going to build your surveys. Frankly, it's what I use when I build surveys. I use this as my checklist, and I literally go through and I mark things off as I go through, so I don't miss anything. So you just go to yourtechcoach.net/free survey. I already forgot. Free survey guide. I kept changing my mind on what to call it. So yeah, yourtechcoach.net, free survey guide. And that way you can go ahead and sign up and get that. I will say that, and this may be part of why Facebook failed, I did notice when I put the link in for Facebook, it did fail. So you might want to actually type it in or, copy and paste it into the browser, because it looked like Facebook was adding stuff to it, just so you know. But everybody else, it looks like it was doing okay. So I think we're safe on that. Okay. All right, let's go and wrap this up. So, when you are writing your questions, now this is super important, obviously, but don't get too bogged down in it, because you can adjust as you go. So, keep in mind that you want to be very specific, right? So, you want to make sure that every question is focused on one thing, right? You don't want to ask this and that in one question. You want 2 questions for that. But you also want to think about maybe asking a question more than once, but different ways, right? So sometimes by changing the way that you ask a question, you get a different answer. It's not that people are being duplicitous. It's just that they interpret the question that you're asking differently depending on how you're saying it. So if you come up with a question and you're like, well, there's a couple ways to do this, maybe do both of them, but don't do them back to back. So do it, ask a couple other questions, and then maybe do it again if you want to compare. Don't do this for every question, because again, you don't want to do a 50 or 100 question survey. You're not going to get responses. The ideal is somewhere between 10 and 20 questions. So if there's a particular question that's really critical, that you're sure that you're getting the answer that they mean to give you, that's a good time to maybe go ahead and do that 2 variation kind of thing. Also, make sure that your questions are concise and easy to understand. That doesn't mean talk down to people. That just means that you want to make sure that there's no way to misinterpret what's being said. And you don't want there to need to be any special knowledge unless you happen to be in an industry where the special knowledge actually matters. So for example, if you are catering to healthcare, right? Or if you're catering to automobile manufacturers, okay? There's certain jargon, there's certain terminology that is required for people to really be communicating like point to point, right? Now, you know, the rest of us may not get it, but those people, it's really critical. Like there's a difference between one way to say it or another, and you need to be very specific and even go into the jargon if you need to. But in general, you want to avoid jargon. You want to avoid ambiguous words. You want to avoid anything that could be misinterpreted. And just as an example, like if you think about something like, what is the one? CRM. Right? CRM is a term that gets thrown around a lot in marketing. I'm going to use that because it's nice and generic. But the problem with CRM is it doesn't mean one thing, even though people talk about it like it does, because CRM can stand for customer relationship management, or it could be, what's the other one? There's a content relationship management or something, right? Customer relationship management, and there's another one. And I'm going to forget. But anyway, there's one that's about customers and one that's about content. And people use them. And I see everybody smiling and nodding when I know that they're all talking about the different ones. So that's an example of like where you want to be really specific. You want to be very careful. You want to spell it out and make sure that everybody's talking about the same thing and you're getting the right answer. Because otherwise you're going to be looking at it going, it doesn't make any sense. That's not what we're talking about. Well, that's because they interpreted it to mean this and you meant that, right? Apples and oranges. So that's super important. Okay, this is so hard. This frankly is the hardest one for everybody because you have expectations in your head on how they're going to answer things. So you need to make sure that you're not asking leading questions, right? So, I mean, this is an extreme example, you know, but you're not going to say, you know, we think our search engine is excellent. How would you rate our search engine? Obviously, it's an extremely silly example on purpose, right? But you do need to be careful of that type of thing, right? Because there's a difference between saying, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate customer service, you know, as opposed to how happy are you with customer service? It's not really the same question, even though at first glance it sounds like it might be. So you need to be very careful about that. As you're building out your survey, you want to make sure that you're starting with generic questions and then going through and being more specific, because that is a logical thought process for humans. So if you start specific and then you go general and then you jump over here to something that's semi-related and then that's going to throw them off and they're going to become uncomfortable and then they're not going to finish the survey. So you want to make sure that there's a logical flow to the questions that you're asking as you're going through that. It doesn't mean that you can't change gears, okay? But if you're going to, like if you're asking about something and then you want to start something else, maybe put a subhead in there or something to break it out so that they're aware as they're going through it, they're like, oh, okay, we're changing the topic a little bit. Great, I'm ready to go do that now. Yeah, and the rate of saying I was jumping ahead here. So you want to arrange them in a logical manner, group like questions together. You know, it's going to talk about customer service, then talk about, you know, product or service. Don't mesh the two because then they're not clear what they're answering. And it's freebie time. Woohoo! Okay, before we go to freebie time, let me just remind you that you could always find me at yourtechcoach.net. Or on Twitter at @your_techcoach. Also, if you are looking for a source, like I've been curating articles and information for quite a while there now on Twitter, but not everybody is aware of that. So if you go to the Twitter account and you start to follow me, or if you set yourself up with a hashtag in your Twitter for your_techcoach, anytime something comes up that's timely, newsworthy, that type of thing, I've been throwing that in Twitter so everybody can find it. So again, you can find me at yourtechcoach.net anytime. There's a contact form. If you have questions, comments, if you have an idea for the show, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Just let me know if you need an answer quickly or if you want me to cover it on a show. It doesn't matter to me. I just need to know which one you want. And you can always reach out to me on Twitter. You can DM me or you can just reply to a tweet. That's all fine. Whatever works for you. All right? Okay, let's go. It's freebie time. Everybody loves a freebie, right? So as I mentioned earlier, I have created, I need to go away here. I have created a document for you. So it's yourtechcoach.net free survey guide. It really needs to be all lowercase though. So let me just show you what you should see. Hang on. Come on. There we go. I'm just going to bring it up so you can see it. Okay, so when you go there, this is what you will see. And then you just have to give me your email address, not any of my email addresses, your email address, so you actually get the document and hit the button, and that's all there is to it. But that way you will, that's not going to work, is it? Okay, well, we'll just come back to me and we'll do this. So yeah, so if you go there, you can go ahead and you can give me your email address, and that would automatically send out the free guide to you. All right? As always, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. If you have any questions, if you think about this later and you're like, oh, I should have asked, feel free. You can go ahead in all of the platforms and just add your comment or question in the comments. And I keep an eye on them, so I will go ahead and answer them. And as always, I do appreciate the likes, the follows, the hearts. I hope that if you found this helpful, you will let your friends know about it. Or if you're entertained by Murphy in the background, that's also fun too. I don't suppose, yeah, of course, he's not on camera again. He's always just a little off camera. See this? Like, I set him up with his own camera, and every time I adjust it so that I can get him on camera, he decides, okay, I'm going to be over here now. But he is always here, being his silly self. All right, so I hope to be getting some survey questions from you folks. I'm looking forward. For those of you who I'm using your products and services, I would love to get your surveys. So feel free to reach out, and we will talk again soon. And Murphy, well, we'll try again with his camera. All right, have a good one, everybody. Bye.